because you guys have heard my journey talking about the chronic pain I deal with, the surgeries, and all these different things I'm doing to get better. But I just have to take a moment and say I am just so thankful and grateful for all the things that she does. And she set me up with this thing, you guys. You guys are going to be able to watch the show. Go to our Facebook page, Rise Up Hour on Facebook, and then you're going to be able to click to the Rise Up Hour that I have on, what is that called, YouTube. And this is the live stream from behind the scenes, so you're going to get to see the back of my bald head today. I usually wear a hat, and then, hey, my guest is here today with the Rummler Hope Network. And hey, do you want to quickly introduce yourself before I make some announcements?
Sure. I'm Alicia House, and I'm the Executive Director of the Rummler Hope Network, and we do overdose prevention and education, as well as chronic pain. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And let me tell you, I'm a trainer for the Rummler Hope Network, and I'm just going to quickly say this. What this organization does, this is like, I'm tickled pink to have them today. What this organization does is so important in the community, and what they've done all over the state, and how and the kits that they distribute, and the training they do, we do, and so I did say on my message, for those of you listening right now, that I'm going to pick a date, and that is the 28th of January. It's a Friday. I'm doing a noon virtual meeting, training, and I'm doing a 4 o'clock virtual training. So I will be announcing that more. I'll be spreading the word out over, and it's for anyone. The training costs nothing. It's free. You'll get to get a certificate, and Steve Rummler will mail you a direct kit after training, and you'll have a kit, and then it's an opportunity to save a life, and just to be trained on it. And so I'm just excited. But let me just make my announcements and give you guys the phone numbers to call in or to send a text, because I know we're in the new age of text messaging. But the number to call in the live studio number is 651-313-5125. Again, that's 651-313-5125. And the number to send text at 763-843-4262. That's 763-843-4262. We'll be taking those calls in, of course, and I just want to remind everyone the Recovery Cafe Frogtown is open Tuesdays and Thursdays here in St. Paul, and at 1 o'clock they have their peer circles, and membership costs nothing, so please check that out. And once you're a member, you can get a free recovery coach, and that costs nothing. You can make $1 million or you can make $0. And if you need a recovery coach immediately without being a member, you can call MRC, that's Minnesota Recovery Connection, and they'll take care of you as well. And then the other thing I want to mention is that Faith Lutheran Church has a free store on 499 Charles Street. That is from 12 to 2 o'clock on Thursdays. And if you need clothing, or you know someone that's going into a recovery home and doesn't have anything, stop by there. This is going to be a place for sources. I know that we're going to be discussing about some other options here, and then also there's baked goods at Faith Lutheran from 12 to 2. So and you don't have to be a member. And then they do have services on 9:30 every Sunday. Just want to mention that to you. And there's some other organizations. Just want to mention that if you need the AA group that is out there, that's the West End group. They do amazing work. And then there's 2218 in Minneapolis. Am I correct on that, Bridge?
Yeah.
And they have usually have a speaker and do some things on Fridays usually.
Saturday nights.
I mean Saturday nights.
8 p.m. speaking.
8 p.m. And I kind of watch them because they seem to do really good work. And then you guys remember we had Pink Cloud Foundation last week. Go to our site. I did put some of this stuff up there. We're going to be getting more information on there. I apologize I haven't posted more this last week. But I did post stuff about Steve Rummler, so I want to mention this. If you want to volunteer or if you want to donate, don't hesitate. That's a great place to do that. And look at the work they do. You can look up information, read stories, and find out how it came about this organization. And I think what they've done is they've saved lives in Minnesota. And that's one of the most important things I want to mention. Alicia, I just want to ask you, am I saying your name right?
It's Alicia, but that's...
Alicia, okay.
Yeah.
So I get names messed up all the time.
That's okay.
But Alicia, so you've been with Steve Rummler, because we were just talking earlier, for 2 years. Mm-hmm. So tell me about the excitement, tell me about your past, and so you guys, this is someone I want to talk about, what's unique about her today is that, remember when I talk about allies always? I always talk about having an ally, and she is an ally because she's not in long-term recovery. But tell about the work you did previously and the work you do now, because I want our listeners to know how much you really support the recovery community.
Sure. So before coming to Steve Rummler, I was working for a private provider that specialized in opioid use disorder in the metro here, and we did 90-day residential, outpatient, and sober living. So it was sort of a continuum of care when it comes to people suffering from opioid use disorder. We also had really great medically assisted treatment services that we could offer them as well. We had a Suboxone provider on site. And we also would facilitate people that were on methadone or needed to be inducted on that with transportation to and from the clinics, and just kind of that full, just continuum of care of taking somebody in from, day 1 to day 365. So I did that for a few years, and, I had heard and worked with Rummler when I was with the private provider. Obviously they're kind of everywhere. They're doing great work around the state. And, when I was looking to sort of, make a new step, I heard about this, position being available, and I thought, I just can't imagine a better space of going into to continue working with people. It is different though, I'm not doing direct client care anymore. And as you know, Steve Rummler is a nonprofit, so it is a very different world than the for-profit world. But,
I've been in both areas, and holy cow, what a difference.
Yes.
Nonprofits should run as profits so they can understand that they need to have funding coming in, and you understand this very much, so in our discussions. But the important part is that in order for these organizations to keep operating, we have to look at it from a different viewpoint of profit, because the funding has to come in some way. And in our earlier discussions today, we're talking about fundings and stuff, but that is such a critical source, and I think that you probably bring a big enlightenment to that organization, and I can see how that's such an important thing, an asset that you bring to the organization.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think in nonprofit world, you have to keep in mind that money's never guaranteed to you. And if you don't continue fighting for those dollars to do your work, you never know where you might be, if you might exist, in a year or 2 or 3 from now. And we've been very fortunate. We've been around for 10 years now. This past July, it was a decade since Steve Rummler organization started. And really, I think it's just continued to grow. I think back 10 years ago, the distribution of naloxone and the education around it was few and far between still, unfortunately. And now we live in a time of, in the state of Minnesota, where naloxone is not only very accessible, but it's also free of charge because of organizations such as ours. So anyone can access it, and anyone can have it on them. Also passing advocacy laws to help people, like Steve's law, the immunity law in Minnesota, so that anyone and everyone can not only carry but administer naloxone without liability, is extremely important and vital too in just saving lives. So it's a full circle amount of work, everything from advocacy to prevention to education, but it's still part of that spectrum of care, like you and I were talking about earlier, Muhannah. It's we're all in this together. Not everyone, we need each other to kind of really make this impact. So
yes, and can we talk about what Steve Rummler really does do? And let's talk about the kids. And I'm going to say this. So I'm a changed person. I'm part of the recovery community. I'm in long-term recovery, but I really had a different view on the Steve Rummler organization, and actually the kids, because I've heard the meal drives, I've heard all this, and I had people who had, when I came out of my recovery, I had to get away from all these crazy people who were using, they were actually on heroin and all this, and made my life crazy. I couldn't even live in my home. It was just a horrible, and I saw the withdrawals and the craziness, and people would turn on a dime, and I mean, there was beautiful individuals that I saw turn into horrible demons, and it sounds horrible to say that, but, and I saw these kids, and I didn't understand what they were, but it saved lives. I saw that part, but I didn't understand what was so important about it, and then I realized that these people are hurting. And then I realized that also other people out there who don't know what they're doing, because people who are on meth is and it's talked about in the recovery world. Meth, when you come off meth, you don't have a withdrawal. And medically, you do not have a withdrawal. You're going to be physically tired. You're going to be exhausted. For those of you listening, heroin and all those opioids, you actually physically will get sick. You will have a withdrawal. And I've been on opioid medications before because I'm from pain, chronic pain and stuff. And so I've experienced a withdrawal before. It's a very different thing because I was never mentally, and I'm blessed to say this, I never had an opiate problem. But that's just the type of body I had. But I did experience when I was coming off my medications, when someone stole from me, because it was my computer guy. I mean, that's all I can say. It shocked the heck out of me how people find out and they'll steal from you. Perfectly knowledgeable man who worked on computers, and his theory was if someone smoked marijuana, they were a horrible person, but because it was a prescribed medication, it's that mentality that because it's prescribed, it was okay, and suddenly it was okay to steal from me, but the withdrawals are devastating for those, even those who come off opioids from being in chronic pain.
Yeah, and I always try and really enlighten people who haven't been in that situation before by saying, like, if you are going through the worst flu of your life, okay, and all you have to do is take a pill or use something to make yourself feel immediately better, tell me it wouldn't be extremely tempting and you wouldn't need and want and desire to do that. I mean, and that's what these people in withdrawal are going through, and that's why it's so hard for them not to use when they're going through that, because it's just the worst sickness and flu of their lives, and there is a way to immediately feel better. And unfortunately, though, that would be continuing to use again, or, you know.
Or let's talk about this.
Withdrawal management.
Let's talk about this, the opioid epidemic, okay? So, being prescribed medications, and it's changed now. There's a lot of new rules, and bless, I believe that your organization has had a lot of opinions on that and workings in that, but let's talk about this. One of the things I noticed that when you go on there, there's, you guys have followed the lawsuits out there, and what's happened with that, and I like the fact that the family is not getting away with being able to settle and not get personally sued, but they knew that these opioids,
The
sacklers knew that people would get hooked. And one of the things I'm talking about is, so you break a leg or you get a horrible injury, you get these prescriptions. Now I'm a businessman. So, and let's talk about Steve Rummler, let's talk about him. Got on his medications, became addicted without knowing he's going to become addicted, and then he died of an overdose. And isn't that the trauma that we're still dealing with, the epidemic that we're talking about? So we're not necessarily talking about people who are shooting up with heroin all the time and all that, and often they can't find that medication because now they've been cut off, and there's been no way to fix the gap of needing that medication, and now they're using drugs off the street.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would say that the opioid epidemic has come in 3 waves. First was the prescription medication wave. Then it was, the individuals who are no longer receiving their medications or maybe needed a higher dose, turning to things like heroin and illegal substances, and then the heroin, overdose deaths, and now we're in fentanyl and synthetics. So that would probably be the 3rd wave that we're sitting in right now. But you're right, I think, keeping in mind that although studies are showing that we are prescribing a lot less opioids than we used to, there's a huge issue with too many physicians and providers not doing that properly or responsibly. So they are now taking some of their patients who had been on long-term opioids and not tapering them or not helping them find assistance in getting off of them. And as you just discussed, coming off of opioids, I mean, it tears your body apart, and you've already now have this mental and physical addiction. So I think making sure that we're continuing the education process with providers and making sure that they understand that these people are going to be very susceptible to falling into opioid use disorder if you just take their prescription away with no assistance or follow-up or tapering, that's a problem. And a lot of those people are now suffering and dying. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and then I think we'll talk a little bit later about this. We'll talk about the fentanyl that's hitting the market. Gosh, and that's where I've come in now. And I'm going to say this as a trainer. It's devastating. The things that are happening. A perfectly working guy decides to go have fun for a weekend. Buys. I'm going to say this. He can control himself. Buys cocaine for a weekend. Finds out that it was fentanyl laced. Never came back. these are really things that are happening in the community, so we can't say it's for the addicts, we can't say it's for the alcoholics, and so that is an important thing that it's often not talked about, because I've heard it talked about that it's just for these addicts and these drug users and all the, no, we've got to take that stigma away, because we got, and now separate, kids taking pills in schools, they're, am I correct, or imprinting, I've heard recently, and I've read a couple articles, did we have a discussion on that?
Benzos are stamped with fentanyl.
Yeah, benzos,
marijuana.
Absolutely a huge problem too. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the fentanyl it's everywhere, and like you just said, and we now know in the United States, if you're between the ages of 18 and 45, statistically, the most likely way that you will die is from an overdose. So, I mean, when you're saying that this isn't just about people that already have substance use disorder, I mean, isn't that telling? Yeah. It's anyone and everyone. We're all at risk right now. That's the number one way I'm going to die. And so that's concerning. And if you're not concerned, even if you've never used before, I don't think that that's a reason not to be. We're all at risk.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like everyone should have it. That's why I really believe in having a kit. I mean, and so that's why I advocate for it. And I was in a training once, and so I don't use names, and a pastor was in one of my trainings, and so we had a nice discussion. Actually, he was a priest, a retired priest, and he still had clinicians, and he had people he was working with. He took a couple kits and asked me, and he had some people he worked with that he talked to who were very successful executives, but had a problem. And he wanted them to at least have the kits, because it's a hidden secret that's not talked about, at least so if something is to happen, that it's a source to say, hey, maybe I need recovery now. Because that is another thing that it can take a person to his recovery, and he gets that mindset, because after you give an overdose kit, call 911, even though you may not want to, just do it, because now you already know somebody has an overdose, they're coming from it, and they meet, because it removes the receptacles from the brain that stick there from the opioids, and puts in the naloxone to stop that from happening again. It's only isn't it about a 30-minute period that you get, that you have that, or less?
No, I mean, it should last, about an hour, or, up to 90 minutes, but yeah, I mean, you definitely want to make sure you call 911, because you can slip back into an overdose.
Depending how much a person's taken, right?
And what they've taken.
Yes, and what they've taken. And it's very harmless. So if you see someone who, and I'm going to mention this on here, so if someone is drinking a large amount, and then they've done some other stuff, and you don't know, the nice thing about these kits, it's not going to harm them. They may get upset from a poke, but it's not going to interact, and we don't have to worry about that. So I'm just, and that's just, these are my opinions, by the way. And then one of the things we're going to do, we're going to go to one of your songs, and then we're going to take questions on here. And so we'll have people sending messages, and see how that goes. So anyone wants to text in a message, 763-843-4262, and the calling number is 651-313-5125. And you guys, I know about the blinking red light. Bridge has been trained, so if someone wants to take that call in today, I'm welcoming that. So before, just so you know, I didn't know, I always think the phone was going to ring, and I didn't realize it'd be a red light blinking. So once that blinks, we just all know it's a call coming in for us. So, and anyone's welcome to do that, but I just want to say, anyone wants to send in a message and ask about the Steve Rummler Hope Network, and we're going to go to your first song. Bless the Lord on that. And that's Eric Church. And by the way, I sat there and listened to your songs today, and that spunked me up this morning. I'm not a kid. You have some interesting taste in music, and I just think it's great. Yeah, and you know what? It sounds like you just have a playful attitude, so I love that. Here goes the song, and let's see. Is it playing?
This is the only one that I actually had a reasoning behind, too.
And we'll talk about that after the song's done, okay? Cool. Oh, you turn it off, okay.
Mic's off. Can you hear the song?
I can hear it. I just want to make sure I can't hear myself. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, your mics are off.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Gabor Mate says in the United States, we have 9/11 every 3 weeks.
Yep.
So that's something kind of cool to, I would say, point out.
Yeah.
So I do my trainings, by the way. I'm going to tell you something I really do that's weird. You'll learn it when I do it. So every 7 minutes, I interrupt my training, I'd say somebody's passed away.
Oh my God. Sad.
So, because,
Right.
and then people are like, and I said, and for all the trouble that it causes, and in the midst of this training, we just lost another person to overdose. Because that's the new, that's part of our new numbers.
Yeah, that's.
It's kind of weird, but it's,
No, it's definitely telling in a scary way. But yeah.
Well, and the thing about the overdose, so I had a friend, he now teaches, does the training.
Okay.
But he does it because he had a friend, they got him the Narcan, okay? They thought he was good, they thought he went back to sleep, he did not.
He
died.
overdosed again.
Yes.
Yep.
So
That's
it's
why
so
it's
important
to call 911. I know.
Shoot him again if you got to.
Well, just in general, call 911 because then they'll monitor them for, you know what I mean, a certain amount of time. And plus, depending on what you take. So, like, methadone specifically has a very long half-life. And so if you overdose on methadone, chances are you will slip back into an overdose after you've been revived. So in those instances, if you call 911, you go in and they can like identify that. They're going to be like, you need to stay for at least 7 hours. You know what I mean? We need to keep you here because chances are this methadone's going to keep overdosing, you know?
you know, a story about methadone, just to mention this. So I was at a winter pain clinic, okay? So they had put me on methadone with a pain medicine. And boy, whenever I said it, everyone looked at, I got treated so differently. Even the nurse would think that I'm coming in for methadone. Well, 6 months anyway, I turned into, and I don't know how people can do methadone all the time. I became lethargic. I just went, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And so they put me on this Etomate, but it was so, the amount of people who judged me, and because it's really used, I didn't realize it was used for withdrawal at the time. This was many years ago.
And maintenance.
Yeah, and maintenance, and I had no clue about that. But you get such a judgment, even in the medical field.
Yep. Even amongst actually other people. So when I worked in private providers, each of our sites, sorry.
It's each of our long time.
Okay, each of our sites would have 16 clients, and let's say 75% of them would be on some sort of MAT, and half of those would be methadone and half would be Suboxone. Even the people that were on Suboxone would judge the people that were on methadone.
Isn't that insane?
Even though they both have opioid use disorder and they're both using maintenance, they would judge each other on which ones they would choose.
Yeah.
It's strange, isn't it?
It is.
Sad.
It was very common.
It looks like it's still got a couple of minutes. You can tell by that. Oh, and to point, gosh, what was it? 6?
I should get you a headset too.
Oh,
And so go ahead and tell me what that song meant to you. 'Cause
Sure. This one actually does have a reasoning behind it. I had a son last February. His name is...
Congratulations.
Thank you. February 22nd. His name is Harten House.
Oh.
And Harten, but we call him Hart for short.
Aww.
And this was a song that my husband had found and definitely spoke to me, and I felt like it was just, very, it uses the word heart and, be brave and, be strong heart and but don't lose your heart. And so I always, that song just reminds me of my son. So, yeah, so that's the reasoning behind that pick.
And I love that. And then, hey, let me just mention this too. If you want to do a shout out to your husband or and let him know that you're thinking about or your son. Congratulations. Do you have just one now or more?
That's my one and only. So yeah, he'll be a year in February here. So it's been quite the year.
Yes, quite a year. A lot going on.
Yes.
And so that's great. So everyone, if you have any questions, 763-843-4262. And now we're going to go into some of the other discussions. So let's talk a little bit more about the training and what is so important about, let's talk about the law, the Steve's law, because someone's asked me about that, and I think that's really important because in my training that I've done, I've had a couple people really like get into detail about that, and so I can better even understand that, because I really do have an understanding of it, but maybe sometimes since you know it on the back of your hand.
Yeah, no, I think that it is probably one of the most discussed topics with our organization. So Steve's Law got passed in 2014, and like I mentioned, it's also known as the Good Samaritan Law, or the immunity law in the state of Minnesota. And we weren't the first state to pass an immunity law, but we were one of the ones at the start. And so since then, almost every state does have its own immunity law. I think 34 states at least. And so, but now I would say we are 8 years later. And although it's great that that was passed and it has made an impact, and we do see that there's efficacy in immunity laws in preventing deaths, I think it's time now, actually, I'll be very honest, for us to revisit our immunity law. I think that with anything you pass, there's a lot of compromising that happens. And I know from the individuals who really worked on that and pushed that through originally, they had to make some compromises. They had to, kind of meet in the middle on some things, and we wanted more immunity granted, and that wasn't necessarily the case, and there were some added provisions that probably wouldn't have been ideal either. And so now I think this next session, I'd love for us as a state and a network to revisit that. We're bringing in a new bill to try and amend the immunity law and make it better, grow it and expand it by granting immunity for things like third-degree drug-induced homicide. Unfortunately, in those situations, more often than not, people are just using with somebody else who also needs help. And unfortunately, then when somebody dies, that individual's being charged with their death. And they're really just somebody else that needed help as well. And so, we would like to see that kind of be taken into consideration. Also, just taking out some of the provisions that might prevent somebody from calling 911. Like there is with the current law, there's a provision that you have to stay on the scene with that individual until EMS or law enforcement get there and give your information. I don't necessarily think that that's necessary, and a lot of states don't have that provision. And so, maybe taking that provision out might create a little bit more, just willingness for individuals to call 911 and ask for help. So right now there are some limitations on the immunity. It doesn't grant immunity for violent crimes. If you have mass amounts and you're the cartel, you're still going to be taken into custody. But these are just people who really are just needing help, also in a situation with an individual who overdosed. And really, we don't need to be, criminalizing these individuals. We need to be helping them.
Yes, and I really believe that that's one of the things I want to discuss, saying that. I'm glad you guys are revisiting it, because that is important, because oftentimes, a person is, and they don't know what's going on, something this is happening, and people still have a fear from the police. We are mending and working on relationships, and we're doing outreach even with the sheriff's office, and all these things are happening, but we still know that there's a fear. So, if someone is there and they call and they say, hey, help them, or just even a bystander at least calls, how much do they want to be involved? Oftentimes they get nervous by that. And they may have given that overdose prevention kit and done that, but then there's always that question, did I do something wrong? Or so I'm glad you guys are looking at revisiting that, and so I think that's just amazing. And so what are some of the things that you guys are working on this coming year or plan to work on?
Yeah. So the fentanyl testing strips is a huge new initiative for us still. Those became legalized in Minnesota on July 1, and we quickly just pivoted our work immediately when that became available.
And can you explain the fentanyl strips? So when someone is, and I did get asked this question, and I think it was a joke, but then I really thought about it for a moment, and I re-explained it. It's just how it explains it. And I think someone thought it's promoting the use of drugs. I think the absolute opposite is forewarning, is preventing an overdose, to tell you the truth, because things have fentanyl in them that we don't even know have fentanyl in them. And we're talking fentanyl strips being used by college kids, being used by adults who don't know, may not plan on being used, or even if it's a person who is using it, being safe, pretty safe protocols in that they were not expected. So explain a little bit more about the fentanyl strips, and if you end up getting fentanyl strips, just call I know there's a thing on there that says text in or use this app or whatever it is. No one is going to be able to track you. That isn't totally anonymous. I just want to make sure that it is, because someone asked me, is that safe to send you information?
Well, and just to clarify what Muhannah's saying is, each of our kits come with 4 test strips, also an instruction card on how to utilize the test strips. And then on the outside of each of the kits is a QR code. And so what we're asking individuals to do, because this is still such a huge and novel initiative, is to use that QR code after they have used one of our strips and give us feedback on their experience. was fentanyl, it's just a really quick questionnaire, like, what was fentanyl present in the substance that you tested? What did you test? And did it change the way that you used? And so our hope is that if enough people can give us feedback on the use of these strips, we can learn from them on whether or not they really do change the use or behavior. If they prevented overdoses, you just never know. So with that, we've bought up, 60,000 strips and are distributing them all over the state and continue to do so. And our hope is that we garner a lot of feedback. But we do also offer the opportunity, if you fill out the survey, to ask for more strips. And, we put in there different options, like, is there an organization that you'd like to receive them from? How would you like to get them? Would you like more of them? And actually, I would say half the people that have done this QR code have actually filled it out and said, yes, I want more. And actually, here's my home address. Mail them to me. And so even though this is completely anonymous, we have no way of tracking you if you fill this out. So many individuals just feel safe and comfortable enough to say, I do want more, and please just send them to me, and this is where I live. So I think that that's just so telling about these populations and how needed the services are.
Yeah, I really think it's important. I'm glad that it's all passed on that to allow that to be tested. Because and these are the things that that you guys really do behind the scenes is get laws passed so we can test, we can have a kit. Because I know, and I'm gonna say this about my brother. Bless his heart, he went through a process, and I really think there was a kit available. And many people who lost lives many years ago. I believe this was here. There could have been a lot of people's lives that were saved. And I know going forward, that's what Steve Rummler does want to do. And I think your guest who did ask a question, can you talk a little bit more about, before we go to the next song, talk about more about Steve and his quest and what happened with him?
Yeah, so he was an individual that had suffered an injury and ended up being prescribed opioids, for his chronic pain, which was very common. And as time went on, he actually found opioids to be a huge lifesaver for him. His parents will still say, we're not anti-opioids. Opioids do help people, and they do save lives too, and help people with their chronic pain. That's really important to understand. But what ended up happening was what became his lifeline eventually became what he said was a noose around his neck. And he ended up needing maybe, more, and he wasn't receiving the dose that he needed to offset now at this point his addiction to the opioids. And he turned to heroin. And my understanding is the first time he used heroin, he overdosed and died. And he was also in the presence of somebody else. And that did not call 911. So that was one of the, obviously moving moments to, get something like that changed. But unfortunately, I still hear about people telling me all the time that their loved one died in the presence of somebody else. So right now it's still about getting that education and awareness out there that call 911. Please, it's so important. It's not worth losing this person's life over your concern or fear of getting into trouble. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about Steve's story. And then his parents, after he passed, actually started the Rummler Network 2 weeks after.
Oh, how amazing, and what amazing that, and I've heard the story and I've read about it, but the way we talk about really just give it a different sense, because he used buds.
Yeah,
and
heroin.
And geez.
Right. So and a lot of people, it's not that unique of a story. That people are prescribed the pain, the prescription opioids, and then eventually have turned to heroin.
And I've heard stories in recovery about that oftentimes.
Absolutely.
And that's why I talk about I'm blessed about that I didn't have that, but I did go through the withdrawal process and all that. And I'm gonna be honest. You talk about the flu, and you're hurt. And especially if you're in chronic pain, and this is where the problem is with that. So when a person is in chronic pain, it's a lifesaver, because suddenly you were able to do things you never were able to do. Mm-hmm. You get to be free, you get to move, you get to have pain free. Your mind gets to be free a little bit, but then it comes back, and you don't want that. Mm-hmm. And then your body needs it. And then your body automatically starts to do the sweats and do this. I think 6 months after I was even off my medications, I naturally had problems. I mean, and I wake up with sweats and just in the middle of the day doing something. And that was a natural process of withdrawal. And I didn't do any of the Suboxone or anything, but I did have some medication to help with the ease of withdrawal. But I will say, I got sick, very, very, very sick, because Minnesota laws, when someone steals from you, they can't be prescribed. And I filed a police report, and the guy admitted he was guilty, but used it up, and it doesn't matter. The whole point is, I have to go through that process, and it kind of, take two on that. What an opportunity it was for me to go through that. It sounds crazy to say that, but I at least understand
Can relate.
and can really relate, because anyone can go through this, and it's a horrible thing that happened. So
imagine like an individual who goes through that, and they have, like you mentioned, they're not going to get their prescription now. Where else are they going to go? And the truth is, they're going to go to an illegal substance, or a third party, in order to try and receive that medication in other ways. And so, I mean, you're lucky that you didn't have to necessarily struggle to find that or need that, but most people probably wouldn't have been able to do it.
yes, and that's why I feel I'm blessed, because even now, when going to the doctors, pain management, medications, to me, it hadn't helped me before. I don't want to try anything different, so I want to try other avenues. And I'm blessed I get to say that, but there's people who need to have it no matter what.
Yes.
And oftentimes in recovery, you're misjudged on that too. So let's, talk about the elephant in the room. If you're in recovery, they say you can't do that, because some people have to have that minimal dose to help them so they can be functioning and doing their job and not suffering all the time, because suffering is not there, and the suffering is invisible. And I love the fact you guys have support for people who are in chronic pain. That's another thing about your organization that you guys talk about. So talk about that portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, chronic pain is still just a very understood area as well, and there's a lot of stigma around that too. But we definitely want people to realize that, like again, I mentioned, we're not saying opioids are bad. We're not out there trying to take away people's prescriptions. What we're doing is we're trying to make people get responsibly prescribed, and also understand the dangers and the concerns that can be entangled in a potential opioid use disorder by having these prescriptions. And so also, realizing there's other resources too, like outside of just medications. So there's, physical therapy, acupuncture, and chiropractic. And I understand that a lot of those services are still not getting funded, which is also a big advocacy point for us, is trying to make sure that people who are looking at other holistic approaches will be able to get that funded, rather than just stopping at a pharmacy and getting a script. That's not where everyone wants to go, and that's not what works for everyone's chronic pain. And so making sure that we're treating the individual and making it individualized care and patient-centered is really important. So
and I can say this from when many years back to now, acupuncture is covered. So there's lots of new things that are out there that they're doing. So we have to talk about that. The medical society, the medical community has realized there's other things to help with the pain. So that is a real big blessing that we have, that is starting to happen. It's being recognized that there's other options than just getting this prescription, because it was just overprescribed, and the patients were the ones that got devastated. And then you take that away, and and so people are hurting. So, and now we're talking about the new wave is the fentanyl. So I'm glad we have the fentanyl strips. I did get another person who just said, let me see, just saying thanks, just for being on the air. But people just love this kind of stuff. So we are going to go to our next song, and if you have questions, send a text message in 763-843-4262, and that's Paramore, Still In You, right?
Into You.
Yes, and this is a lovely song too, by the way. It's got an upbeat. Here we go.
Yeah, I love her voice. It's not on.
Oh, jeez.
Now it is.
Okay. Did you have it unplugged?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to move this one.
Yes.
Open it.
And then I love you that in the middle. Can we talk
Oh, in the middle?
Yeah, because just once in a while you said, because we talk about really deep issues.
Okay. And you might want to do back-to-back songs because you're running out of
Yeah.
time. You only got 16 minutes
Yeah,
left.
we'll do back to back.
That sounds good. Can I eat a banana?
Yes.
I didn't eat this morning.
You're doing great, by the way.
Oh,
Yes.
And now I know how to edit this out when there's... I know how to edit out when we have... That's dead air.
Oh, okay.
Because it wasn't playing, so I know how to edit that out.
Oh, for-
Before we send it to film.
Oh.
Eh?
And so we do send it to Phil, right?
Well, we save it to the drive that he gets. And
I didn't-
the name, I guess, is the way we're gonna do it too.
And then we'll save one more for us with a different name,
We can do that.
so we know the date.
Yeah, we can have the date.
Because he wants it always the same name. Well, how do you keep track of them, right?
Right. I don't know. Maybe the way it goes into him. It
Yes, because
tags the date.
I always tried to figure that out.
Yeah. Dates make sense to me.
This is such a cute song, actually.
it is.
He must have really trained you.
Oh, you just let me do everything?
So no one ever did it. Someone just told me to look and I watched and he said,
You watched me.
"Three weeks after three times of watching, they said you're on your own." I'm like, what?
Well, I've been watching you for 3 weeks.
Yeah, but then they put me on my own.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I know what I'm
Ready to
doing.
the fire.
And I'm pushing buttons. I'm like, this is the button to push.
Yes. Oh yeah. I don't know.
Because he let me do all the controls. I'm filming like a 15-minute, last minute he goes, push this, and that's before the new keyboard came. It was the old one.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, Phil was great. But you had a good trainer.
And Mike?
Yeah. I'm gonna read that in between and then play another song.
Okay. So I'll just throw your mic down. I do have an alarm set for 1:55.
Oh, ask her how test strips work on drugs that are dry. What substances can be tested?
Talk about marijuana, because a lot of people have a prescription for marijuana.
Right.
But where are they getting it from? Who knows? You know? So,
Yeah, especially Minnesota because it's not regulated.
Right. So I would point out, like, use the test strips on your marijuana.
Or anything, yeah. You can literally test anything. But yeah, I'll definitely go over that.
And one of the greats on that is, but I do want to read a disclaimer later because we are going into such deep discussions on the rise of our juicy talks. And that's what is so amazing about the show. We talk about things that are not talked about. WFNU is a volunteer-run station made up of many different community voices. Each program expresses one aspect of this diversity and not the view of WFNU or FTI as a whole. So I just want to make sure that that's our views that we're talking about. And then we're going to go right into another song. And then after that, a person sent a message out and said, ask about the test strips, how they work on drugs that are dry, and what substances they can be tested on. And that's such a great question from one of our listeners. But we are going to go into the next song of Andrea Day.
Stop this one first.
Yeah, stop that. And Grace is teaching you these things. Stop. It's playing on air. Okay. Well, and then we're going to go to Andrea Day. And this one, we all know, we've heard this several times on here. It's Rise Up. I love the song.
Beautiful.
There we go.
I can't believe they plow this empty lot that's
I know.
not even used.
A lot of people use it for driving.
Yeah, they usually whip shitties.
Yeah.
Nice.
I wonder what they're going to do with this building.
I don't know.
This is going to turn to Ramada, by the way.
Oh, okay. Instead of Radisson.
Yeah, it's a Radisson now, right?
It's Radisson.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it was a Days Inn or something else.
Yeah, it used to be, yeah.
Yeah, because they used this for housing.
Okay. I didn't know that.
While the pandemic was happening.
That's. Oh, I do remember hearing about
And now
that.
they're gutting it out and redoing the whole thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, if you guys need any trainings or things that are happening and someone's not able to do it, let me know. I'm available. I love doing the trainings.
Yeah, I am. Like I said, our new ODP manager doesn't start till the 24th, so I may take you up on that because just trying to fill in the gaps of the requested trainings right now has been really hard for me.
Oh, I'm open. Actually, because I'm not doing much right now.
Right, and most of them, I mean, actually all of them right now, for the most part, except for Jewel Fairbanks, requested in person, but all the other ones are just virtual.
Okay, I can do virtuals, and I can do even in person.
Okay. I might send you some ones that I already have on the calendar and see if you can take any of them for me.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that.
Because I'm just so like...
yeah, because it opens you up to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta train me to be a trainer.
Yeah, and I gotta train you to be a trainer.
Exactly. I need that. I know.
Yeah, so take me up on that.
I will.
And I think what's going to end up happening is, I think I'm going to ask MRC when I meet with Wendy, if I'm going to be put on there. I'm no longer with Recovery Cafe Frogtown.
Oh yeah, you told me that. Yeah.
So I'm separated from them, so that's great, but I'm probably have MRC on mine, or the PAC committee, or however it works. It really doesn't matter, but I still promote Recovery Cafe, and I love them.
Yeah.
But my work is into some other areas.
Yep.
Because I like having different voices.
Yeah, absolutely.
I look at a nonprofit from a business point of view, because my background is business, and I used to run some flower shops and director of operations and manage people and different. And you gotta look at things from a profit point of view.
Yes.
Not from like scraping. You can't look at scraping.
No, you can't.
Because then you can't operate.
No, you can't. Absolutely.
And then when you talk about people being together, you also gotta look at the view of being. My theory is that we can collaborate together, but we also need to know where the money's coming from. Hey, come on in, and I'm not scared. I'll say, hey, how much are you giving?
Right. People need to feel not only appreciated, but taken care of.
Yeah.
I know. One of the biggest things I kind of learned when I started too is that, in the nonprofit world, you're taking care of everybody else, but who's taking care of you? And I think that that's something that I'm trying to definitely change, at least within my own network, and make sure that my staff has things. It is. I mean, when I started, they didn't even have health insurance, and so now, what I mean, those are just bare minimum necessities, I think. And so just making sure that our staff is feeling like they don't have to worry about what's going to happen to them in a year or two or whatever.
No, look, NRC's got great vacation, great holidays, for example.
Yeah.
They really have a nice quality package on that, and so those are interesting things. So you gotta also remember, we're getting out our cup and emptying it.
Yeah.
Fill our cup a little.
It has to.
Internally, organizations need to do that.
It's nonprofit burnout. It's a real thing. And I can understand it, for sure.
And another great song. And by the way, so let's answer that. Wait, let me just say this. Again, this is the Rise Up Hour. We talk about controversial things, and I just want to say, reminding everyone, if you need a place to go to here in St. Paul, in the Frogtown community, Recovery Cafe Frogtown is open Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And peer circles are from 1 to 2 o'clock, and it's free. No, don't worry about costing anything. Membership is totally free. And then also on Thursdays, Faith Lutheran Church has got the free store open, and you can also get baked goods, and that's from noon to 2. Stop in there. Everyone's welcome, and that doesn't take membership. And if you need a coach, Recovery Cafe Frogtown offers that, free recovery coach. But if you need one, you can also look at MRC. It's free, no cost to you. And by the way, you can make $1 million or you can make $0. And if you just have questions about where you're at in your journey and just need to know if you may have an issue, they're going to help you. So just don't be shy, reach out. And it's all confidential. And so now we're going to talk about test strips.
Yeah.
So the question was, how do the test strips work on drugs that are dry?
Yeah, so, I mean, your drugs are most likely going to be dry when you first receive them. But in our instruction cards, too, we do try to differentiate how to test different substances, too, because it's not a one-way fits all. So, obviously, opioids are probably going to be the most prevalent. And if you have a powder substance versus a pill substance, obviously with the pills, you do want to crush up the entire substance. It could be like the chocolate chip cookie effect, where, if you have a pill, there might be fentanyl in a little bit of it and not in the rest. So it is important to crush up the entire pill before you test it, in order to make sure that you're getting a good sample of the entire drug itself. And then with methamphetamine too, there is a little bit more of a different way that you test that. But what you're going to do with your substance is you're going to dilute it with water. And just to clarify, it does have to be water. It can't be any sort of liquid that you might come across. So water it's very it is the way that you properly use the strips. So you would dilute your substance, and then you would dip the strip into the water. With the diluted or with the substance in it. So a lot of times, if you, let's say you're about to use, maybe if you just leave the residue at the bottom after you already pull your substance through the syringe, you could just take that little bit. It does not take much that you have to test, and you're going to dilute it with some water. The water would be the amount of water of dilution will be different if it's an opioid versus a methamphetamine. And then, dip the strip in and wait 5 minutes, and it will either tell you if it's positive, negative, or invalid.
Oh, wow, okay.
And then
that easy.
It is that easy, yeah. It's kind of like a pregnancy test, but you're testing your substance, not your urine. So and you could do that with any substance. If you're using cocaine, ecstasy, whatever it might be, yes, you're going to want to dilute that substance and even just the residue before you use, and just make sure that there's no fentanyl present. Or if there is, just make sure that you're safer about the way that you use. Make sure you have naloxone available. Make sure you don't use alone. And make sure that, maybe you might choose to smoke it instead of inject it, or use slower, or use less. Try to just be safe.
And you guys are hearing that, so this is not saying go ahead and just start using drugs, and the stigma that is out there. Let's take that stigma away and start sharing that with each other, making sure we know that. So we're going to skip out a one-year song. So Queen, Under Pressure, or MTK.
Queen.
Queen, okay, we're going to play Queen. And that's going to be our last song, and then we'll say our goodbyes. And can I just say thank you for being here, and we're going to have you back on this year if you don't mind. We're going to keep talking about how the network's going, and I do have a lot of by the way, I do have a lot of thank yous that people are just saying thank you, and that's great. So, and by the way, the training I'm going to have, I'll be announcing it for the next couple of weeks, but it's going to be the 28th of January. It's going to be at noon and at 4 o'clock, and then Steve Rummler, if you want to look on their website, they can go to Steve Rummler Network, HopeNetwork.org, right?
Yep.
And they just click on that, and they can see whatever you guys offer it.
Absolutely, yep. And just keep in mind, the fentanyl testing strips and naloxone kits are free of charge, and our trainings are too. So please, just reach out if you need anything.
Oh, cool. Go ahead, and I'm going to just play that, and let's start going with that. Play that short.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, play it a little, and then I'll come back and see you.
Yeah.
We'll figure out this last part, how it works.
There we go. 3 minutes. So you'll have to cut the song short?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. Wow.
It doesn't go till 2 exactly.
No.
Interesting.
We take a few, get 4 minutes, yeah, it'll go to my older
commercial.
Yeah.
It has to play the disclaimer.
And it needs a 4 minute, well, yeah, it's just better to do within the.
Safer than sorry.
Yes. I've been forewarned. They love my show, but I kind of sometimes,
They've been warned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
But Phil talked to me really nice about it last week.
Okay.
He wasn't kind of grumpy. He was actually, Muhannah, you actually have really good people that listen to the show, that like your show. So, so I just want to explain. I said, well, yeah, Bruce is really good. He's like, okay. So I'm like, yes, Bruce, actually, see, you guys, the insides of the show.
Oh. Well, thank you guys for having me. It was fun.
Oh, what a blessing.
It went so fast.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's
Always
crazy.
does.
Yeah, no, thank you. Anytime. I love your passion.
Well, if you say that, I'm just going to keep taking the show's guests, but I do a podcast.
Oh, okay.
So it's nothing like it's in a closet, basically. But it's a conversation about recovery and UDD.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a 155 alarm.
Okay. I'm going to stop this.
Yeah, I'll do it like this.
Yeah.
Come on, I'm going to put you on. You ready?
And we're going through that song. We are going to cut that song short because we are going to be going over a quick thank yous, and I'm going to be within my timeline. So, can you say your name again?
Yeah, Alicia House.
Alicia House from the Steve.
Rummler Hope Network.
And what is it you guys do?
Overdose prevention and awareness.
Awesome. And throughout the state of Minnesota. And if you need any training, go to SteveRummlerHopeNetwork.org and just go on the site and find out about trainings. I'm doing trainings, so go to the Rise Up Hour, check that out. And I can only say one thing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I love being a trainer for your organization. I'm just going to say that. Outreach. And if anyone that's listening to the Rise Up Hour, if they need someone, if your organization needs a training or need a public training, I have no problem coming out and doing an in-person or doing via Zoom because of the pandemic. But next week, I look forward to having our listeners come on. And you guys just have a great day on this beautiful Sunday. And stay in touch, everyone. Excellent. We did it. Don't get me wrong. I'm a hard person.
Of course.
How was that?
Thank you for having me.
Yes. I'm fluent. See, I get all excited about stuff.
Actually, let me get a couple pictures of you.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and then we'll get it later from that.
Oh, and I'm gonna end this too.
Do you want us to go on that side or
Yeah,
this
let's
side?
go on that side.
Let's go out there. That's a better banner, and you got more space.
Oh, cool.